Hello. Hugh Ross is a man who's a very public official. Public, not public for the government, but public in that he leads a group called Reasons to Believe, and he gives speeches and has things on the internet. And put a video up, or General Han Solo, the channel, put it up, or copied it, that got me fired up. I couldn't stop thinking about it, telling my wife how wrong he was, and so I watched it a second time and took notes, and here are my thoughts about the video. I guess maybe I'll put the link in the comment section, description section. He was talking about Noah's flood and what he thinks it is. And when it says whole earth, the whole earth was flooded, he thinks that doesn't really mean whole earth. Because in other parts of the Bible it says whole earth when it just means, I know, the Roman Empire or something like that. I'm sure when God says the whole earth got flooded, it was the whole earth. And one reason to think that the whole earth might mean the whole earth is Noah did not live in a country that the Bible identifies. And you'd have a stronger argument. You'd have an argument if it said Noah lived in an empire called Araba, an empire called, I don't know, whatever the name would be. But it doesn't say that. He cited the verses that in the Old Testament that aren't flood verses that talk about God putting limits on the sea, and said that somehow that means there could be a worldwide flood because God said there are limits on the sea. But no, that doesn't add up to me. Even if God put limits on the sea, that does not prevent God from undoing those limits if he needs to. Hello, God's in charge. He can do that. Some of those verses might be describing the post-flood world. And God did promise never to flood the whole world again. And, you know, there are limits on the sea. The whole world's not going to get covered again. God saying there are limits on the sea doesn't mean that the sea can't be allowed by God to go do something. I thought of a couple of analogies. If somebody has a well-trained attack dog and somebody is nervous around the dog, they might calm the person down by saying, he's not going to attack you. He would never attack you. And they're meaning, he would never attack you without me telling him, and I know you're a good person, so he's not going to attack you. But that doesn't mean that when somebody else, you know, attacks that dog owner, the dog owner's not going to get the dog to bite him. Or if somebody's got a gun, and there's somebody who's got a phobia of guns, the person with the gun might say, I'm not going to shoot you, you're safe. Doesn't mean he's never going to shoot in self-defense. But just that one person at that one time period needs to calm down and feel safe. Well, God's letting us know we need to feel safe. The sea's not going to cover the whole earth again without him telling it. Hugh Ross said that the third day happened 2 billion years ago. I strongly disagree with him on that. Because that means that there were billions of years of plants somehow reproducing without insects to pollinate them. But, hello, there are a lot of plants that are dependent on pollinating insects. Okay. Oh yeah, and God gives a creation account describing days. A day is an equally timed event. It's a certain amount of time. That's one argument I've got against the old Earth hypothesis. One day means, a billion years in one day, but a few 100,000 the other day. Or it's the people that say that the 6 days of creation took place over more than a day. Some of them are, when you gas them to get specific, they are assigning different lengths of time for the different things that happen on the different days. Alright. Specifically, he cited Job 38, Psalms 104, and Proverbs 8 as creation accounts so we can understand what happened. Those were not creation accounts. No, Hugh Ross is wrong on that. Those 3 chapters are chapters that are teaching us how majestic God is and have reference for him because he did create it. It does cite him as a creator, but it doesn't say, fear God, worship God because he did it. This step this time, this step the next time. It doesn't put things in an orderly, structured way where it's telling you how it happened. It's just saying God did it, worship him. God did it, have reverence for him. They're poetic. In other words, they're poetic praises of God. Now, Peter was obviously talking about the whole world when he said in 2 Peter chapter 3 that the whole world was destroyed by a flood. I seriously have to wonder if Hugh Ross does some mind-altering drugs, if he has stolen some wet from family members of mine who I hope get off of that stuff before he reads the Bible. If he can read that thing that Peter wrote, where Peter's definitely talking about the whole world and say, no, that's just the Roman Empire. Peter is saying the Roman Empire got flooded or something the size of the Roman Empire. No, he didn't say that. He said the whole world. Har is the Hebrew word for mountain, but it could also mean a hill. So what? Oh my goodness, that's such a weak argument. So if the word could mean a little mountain and it could mean a hill, and it says all, somehow Hugh Ross is able to exclude the mountains from his mind. If I say all gas-powered vehicles will have a problem if we have a fuel crisis or an oil crisis. Just because gas-powered vehicles means a little scooter and some of the bigger trucks, well, no, the biggest trucks don't use gasoline, they use diesel, but the bigger trucks that still use gasoline, just because that one description I gave in a hypothetical scenario covers both that little thing and the big thing, I don't see any logical reason to then say, well, that means those big gasoline-powered things aren't going to have a problem when all the high mountains were covered, when all the Har were covered, and then it says the high ones. So, it's letting you know there when it says the high mountains were cute. Hush. When it says the high mountains were covered, it's letting you know the high ones were covered. Hugh Ross, oh man, I strongly disagree with him because he is looking at some things in the Bible and saying the opposite of what's there. And one of the things he said was, well, in determining the size of the flood, you've got to figure out what mountains Noah could see in this regional flood. No, you don't have to see that because, you don't have to figure that out, because the account of the flood in Genesis is God telling Moses. So, what mountains God would have seen and God would have known about is what matters. Not what mountains Noah saw, but what God saw, what God knew about. his argument about Noah, what he would have seen and wouldn't have seen, would carry some weight if it was Noah telling the story, but it's God telling Moses, not Noah telling Moses. And he said the dove didn't find a place to sit because it rested its foot. Because the dove was lower than Noah. Is he saying that the doves that were on the ark were like submarine doves? Puffins or penguins that couldn't fly? Any flying bird's going to be able to fly up, 100 feet and get double the height of the top of the ark. I don't see any reason to believe that the dove couldn't get higher than Noah to see better and see if there was land. Alrighty. Oh yeah. Hugh Ross is certain that the flood was not a global flood. He's very certain about that. But then he is saying, but it can't be too small. Why not? I reject his logic there. I don't get it. If you're going to say it can't be the whole world, why can't it be small if you're going to ignore what the Bible says about how big the flood was? Hello? He says Genesis 6 tells us that people were being punished by God for not filling the whole earth. Well, he found a different way to solve that problem a few chapters later. Why wouldn't he have used that to solve the problem? If that were the reason, but I don't see how, without doing some mind-altering drugs or having some very extremely strong presuppositions and biases. You can look at Genesis chapter 6 and see the people not spreading out over the earth. Yeah. You like to use, I don't know, does the new the NIV use the word reprobate instead of iniquity? Iniquity is full. I'm used to the King James Version. I like it better if you talk about what people's conditions are in the wording the King James uses. He mentioned that Abraham knew the Amorites were really bad news, and God told Abraham it wasn't time to wipe them out yet. Their iniquity wasn't full, as the way the King James Version puts it. Other places in the scriptures it uses the term ripe for iniquity to describe those who are ready for God to wipe them out. If that was the only thing I had with this video, I wouldn't have made this with the video I'm talking about, I wouldn't have made this video. One thing that bugs me is inconsistency. If you claim there's a certain reason or reason you do things or way you come to a conclusion, if you don't use that same thing, that's inconsistency, and it bugs me, and it stands out. I notice it, and he was being inconsistent about at least one thing. When all these things happened, he, believes the Bible and the chronology that you can get from the Bible, because the Bible sometimes tells us so-and-so was so many years old, he begat so-and-so. So-and-so was so many years old, he begat so-and-so, and you can get a rough estimate of the time, and a rough and accurate estimate of the time of things. Well, he accepted what it said about when Noah was, and when Abraham was, but then completely threw everything out when he went to Noah. Now, Abraham was about 4,000 years ago. Good job, you got that one right. But Noah, that was about 40,000 years ago, and Adam was about 100,000 years ago. What? That's inconsistent. If Abraham was 4,000 years ago, then the others should be the same dates also. Yeah, and that's two geologists. Oh, at the end of this video, Hugh Ross says we need to do geology, but he started the video off denouncing people doing real geology and trying to figure out, hey, got a lot of sediments here together. How did they get there? Yeah, one thing that Hugh Ross is wrong about is the book of Genesis. Well, the pre-flood world. We can't know where that was. We can know by revelation if God tells us. But we can't, say, hey, the river is named this. We know where it is. No, because the whole world was covered. Things got moved around. And when they got off of the ark, they could very easily have named rivers like the rivers were before. And it could have been a completely different river in a completely different place that they named the same as that one river whose name matches up with the name we give it now and the pre-flood world. Yes, I got a problem with that. And he put the map of where he thinks everything was. I fact-checked him and read Genesis chapter 2 again, and I realized or noticed the river starts in the Garden of Eden and breaks up into 4 rivers. So, the Garden of Eden must have been high. Maybe not on Mount Everest. Well, Mount Everest might be a new thing. But, it definitely was not. His theory about where the Garden of Eden was is way down in the bottom of what we now call the, not the Red Sea, the one on the other side of Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf. His theory is the Garden of Eden and where Noah lived before the flood, which was only in that small area, was where now is the bottom of the Persian Gulf. That doesn't match up because you can't have a river go out of there that goes anywhere and spreads into 4 rivers. So Hugh Ross should read the Bible the next time before he tries to make a map. Because his map did not match up with what Genesis chapter 2 says. At the end of the talk, he denounced Old Earth creationists. Since he was so wrong on all this stuff, that made me kind of like Old Earth creationists, although I still not a big fan of Old Earth creationists. But I thought Hugh Ross was an Old Earth creationist. He was saying Adam was a lot more than 6,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. I thought that would make Hugh Ross an Old Earth creationist. He's confusing. At least on this video he was confusing. There we go, good. And one last thought. The strongest... Oh, and one thing he said was something about all of the animals associated with man were saved from the flood. It doesn't say that in the Bible, all the animals associated with man. It says all the animals is what Noah got on the ark. So he was definitely making some additions to the biblical story there. God can make additions. If God inspired Hugh Ross, good for him. But I don't think that was inspiration from God when he talked as if God didn't care about the survival of cockroaches and the deer and turkeys. Of wild turkeys, in case somebody thought I was thinking about domestic turkeys there. The strongest argument I can come up with for a worldwide flood and not this silly regional flood. Oh yeah, one other thing. There's some people that say the Black Sea got flooded, and that's that's Noah's flood. That what we now call the Straits of Dardanelles was a natural dam that blocked the ocean water from getting to the Black Sea. And when something broke that down, that's when there was a big flood that covered like 1 million square acres. He said Hugh Ross denounced that as that couldn't be the biblical flood. I denounce Hugh Ross's denouncement. We can't be certain where Noah lived before the flood and where the Garden of Eden was. The earth went through a worldwide flood. There very likely were big changes on where things were, the shapes of hills and mountains. And so why couldn't it have been the Black Sea? Hugh Ross was saying we can't believe what the Bible says about it. So if you can't believe what the Bible says about the flood, then why couldn't it be the Black Sea? Or why could the Bible be right and the Black Sea is it? I don't see how the Black Sea is too far away from where the flood happened or doesn't cover enough territory. Well, I believe that Black Sea theory is wrong because it doesn't cover the whole earth. But if you're going to say it's not the whole earth, then how can you denounce the Black Sea as firmly and dogmatically as what's his name? I'm getting flustered here. As Hugh Ross was denouncing the Black Sea theory. The strongest argument I can come up with for why I'm certain that the flood of Noah was a worldwide flood, and maybe this explains why I can get a little bit energized about this subject. If you claim that God told Noah to build a boat for a flood that only covered a couple 100 miles in either direction, you're accusing God of being very stupid. That's an extremely stupid God if he can't just figure out how to say to Noah, alright, there's going to be a big problem, walk that way. Take your farm animals with you, take some tools with you, walk that way. A couple 100 miles over that mountain, you'll be safe. Why couldn't God could have done that if it was a regional flood. And God has told people to move around in the past. He had Jesus, his earthly parents, get him out of the land so that he wouldn't be killed by Herod. He had Noah leave the land of Ur, of the Chaldeans. And if you believe the Book of Mormon, there's even more stories where God tells people to leave and walk away from a place. Alright. So, thank you for watching. In closing, God is not so stupid that he's going to have a guy build a big huge boat when he could have told the guy to walk over the mountain. Have a good day.